Dziękujemy bardzo dyrekcji Biura Pełnomocnika Rządu do Spraw Osób Niepełnosprawnych, która rozpoczęła naszą konferencję. W dniu dzisiejszym będzie naprawdę prawdziwa uczta dla osób zainteresowanych projektowaniem uniwersalnym. O każdym z ekspertów można by bardzo dużo mówić i dużo chcieliśmy też o nich Państwu powiedzieć. Wszystko to jest spisane w broszurze na temat prelegentów, więc będę zapowiadała bardzo krótko, bo czasu mamy stosunkowo mało. Bardzo proszę naszego gościa specjalnego, eksperta światowej sławy, pana Pete Karchera, który wystąpi na naszej konferencji i opowie o projektowaniu uniwersalnym. Mr. Karcher, the floor is yours.
That's not what I wanted. Here we are. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I have to apologize. Despite the fact that I've been working in Poland and with Polish people for a long time now, I still don't speak any Polish. Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. So I hope you bear with me. I shall try to speak clearly in English, and the interpreters will do, I'm sure, a magnificent job. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me. It's always very interesting to come to Poland, but it's also always very interesting to have the opportunity to present about design for all, rather than universal design in my case. I shall try my best to keep within the time, but I have a major title given to me, the business response to social needs. And you know, I could talk to you all day about this, but to try to do it in 20 minutes is a major challenge. Why do I talk about design for all and not universal design? Well, it's because I'm European, and because the matrix of this area of design thinking and work in design is design for all in Europe and universal design in America for all sorts of historical reasons, and also reasons of jurisprudence, which I don't need to go into and bore you. But suffice to say at this stage that if there is a business audience, it's particularly interesting to talk about design for all, because the approach that has historically been adopted by universal design from the United States onwards is an approach of legislation, norms and standards, which are very important, but they are not very welcome to a business audience. A business audience likes to hear about profits and markets and employment, and so that is the type of message that I like to give you, and that is in fact the approach that we use in Design for All, because we believe that it's important to make people do things willingly rather than to impose it on them. But that said, of course there is a great deal of good in universal design as well as design for all, and it's natural that universal design should be the term that was chosen by the United Nations Convention, because it has a legislative matrix, whereas we have a design matrix. So that's the premise. I shall speak to you basically in these terms, a few words about the organization EIDD Design for All Europe. I shall try to set the scenario in very broad terms, social needs today. I shall give a short introduction to Design for All, to the approach that we use in Design for All, and I hope to have time to give you some examples of what this means in terms of a business response. EIDD Design for All Europe, we founded it in 1993 in Dublin, then with the name of the European Institute for Design and Disability. Our first aim, our first objective was to improve the quality of life for people with disabilities using design. It didn't take very long for us to understand that this is part of a bigger picture. It doesn't make sense to tackle social issues in watertight containers. It makes sense to look at the bigger picture, especially when you are working in the area of innovation and creativity, which is our function in the world of design, in the broad sense of the term, which means everything from places through products, communications, services, and systems and strategies. So we very soon changed our name to Design for All Europe because we realized that that is our core business. We now have 35 members. Our members are organizations only in 23 European states, from Norway to Turkey and from Portugal to Finland. We have Design for All associations, that is, associations working specifically in the area of Design for All. We have designer associations in many countries. We have design promotion centers, such as the Zamek Cieszyn here in Poland, but not only. We have design promotion centers. We have schools and universities, associations of people with disabilities. We have foundations of various kinds. We have some cities who want to take a special interest in the work that we do. And just lately we also have a design museum, and we hope to have more of them. So a wide variety of organizations that take an interest in the sort of work that we do. This is the geographical distribution for those of you who don't see the image on the screen. It shows a map of Europe with the locations of one or more of our member associations distributed across the map of Europe, and highlighting the countries where we have members. And in the same way, of course, by negativity, highlighting those countries where we don't yet have members. Now, the scenario. As I just showed you a map of Europe, it's interesting to take a look at the situation in our continent today. These figures that I'm showing, European population statistics, the source is Eurostat in 2005. We have the overall population of Europe, which is estimated at, let me see if this thing can work, yes, about 450 million people in 2004, 2005. And in 2050, we have about the same, 450 million people. A slight drop of 1.5% is estimated by Eurostat. And we could think, well, that's really not a very disastrous situation at all, is it? Except that the makeup, the composition of the population changes drastically in the course of those 45 years. Now only 35 years, really, 37 years left to us. The working age population in 2004 was 67% of our European population, whereas by 2050 it will only be 57%. That's 10% and more less, and that translates into 52 million less people of working age. Now, every time we talk about the people of working age, we are talking about the ones who pay taxes and who pay social security and who keep the entire business going for our society. They are the ones who pay for the social assistance for the elderly. They are the ones who pay for the schools for the young. They are the ones who pay for everybody who has a pension. And they are the ones who pay and also do the work for those who are requiring assistance in order to live a full and satisfying life in our society. So when we have a drastic number less who are in that age bracket, we find ourselves with a major challenge. There will be 3% less of the population in the age of children, 1 to 14 years, which means that there's also writing on the wall. Our population is getting older, and there are less young people, and it's going to continue. The elderly will almost double from 16.4% to a drastic 30%. That's the over 65s, people at the moment in pension age. 59 million more people relying on pensions and social security. The very elderly will almost treble from 4% to over 11%, well on the way to 12%. That's people over 80 years old. And those are the people who will be needing assistance. If you can compare that, 11.4% with the elderly now 16.4%, it's very much like saying we will have over 80, the same number that we now have over 65, or that we did have 10 years ago. It means that we look on the dependency ratios. These are my figures here. 1 in 4, in 2004, 1 person in 4 was over 65 and depending on the working population, and 1 in 4 was under 15 and depending on the working population. By the time we get to 2050, the figures for the children are about the same, the dependency ratio. That's the proportion of the working population that is under 15. It's still about 1/4. But more than 2 people for every 4 people in work will be over 65. What this means in total is that where in 2004 we had a situation of 2 dependents for every 4 people in work, in 2050 there will be 3 dependents for every 4 people of a working age. It means that our current social model is unsustainable. We cannot continue this way. And this is not even looking at the situation of the economic crisis. These figures are 2004. This is before the economic crisis and the rise in unemployment in Europe. Well, this is assuming full employment, which of course we know is a chimera. It doesn't take place, it doesn't happen anywhere. The highest proportions of over 80s in 2050, we will have 14% in Italy and 13.6% in Germany. And you may think, oh, well, of course, that's those countries. They're old. Poland's a younger country. Well, look again, because these are the UNESCO figures, United Nations figures. Again, I've done my extrapolations here. And the situation is very, very similar, with the one difference that it is radical, because in Poland, you see, in 2010, that's only 3 years ago, the population over 65 was less than 19%. But it will be over 52% of the population of working age. So you will have a much, much higher level of dependency by the time we get to 2050. And the tendency is much more drastic in Poland than it is in Germany or Italy or the UK. What this means is there is a window of opportunity which is rapidly closing. It's an opportunity to change the way we design our world and to change the way we design the products, the systems, the services, everything in it, so that more older people can be autonomous for longer. Because we can't afford to have older people drawing pensions and requiring assistance because the world is badly designed. A lot of people could be living autonomously now if we had designed our world better than the way we did. We made a bad job of it. It's designed badly. And for that reason, people have to have assistance. Now, come 2050, we can't afford to pay that assistance and also pay the pensions to the people receiving assistance. We simply don't have the economy to do it anymore. So that's drastic. And the solution is design. Well, you see, now I've painted a very black picture for you, but these last 2 lines here, population aging is a fact. We can look upon it as a problem and decide that it's going to cause us to commit mass suicide because we can't get out of it. Or we can look upon it as a resource for business, a challenge, a way to do new business and make new profit margins, and maybe revive our economy in Europe. In the same way, we can look upon disability. Disability is a fact. It's not going to go away. In fact, with an aging population, it's going to grow. We can look upon it as a problem and run around in circles like a headless chicken, or we can look upon it as a resource for business and make it into a profits venture, very much as was mentioned in the introduction. And in fact, you know, the whole thing goes to human diversity, because there's no such thing as 2 people who are identical in this world. Human diversity is not a problem. It is a resource. It's a resource for business. It's a way for us to do business, to make money, I'm sorry, it sounds terribly mercenary if I keep on pushing on this button of making money. But you know, it's the only way to change the world, to make sure that the business and the administration decision makers understand that this is not a problem. This is an opportunity. So, let's establish some parameters about the approach. Design for all, universal design, name it what you will at the moment. But first of all, we've got to understand what design is. This is what most people out there on the street understand when you talk about design. Something that is luxurious, expensive, superfluous, and probably not very useful or usable. It certainly doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It's a fashion item. If you talk to businesses about design and they understand this, they run a mile. They don't want to know. If you talk to a public administration about design, they say, well, what's that got to do with me? Nothing. Well, it's not surprising. The design community very often talks about these things instead of talking about what design really is. The Oxford English Dictionary, back in about 1880, defined design in this way. Notice it doesn't say anything about the word product. Dziękuję. It says a plan or scheme conceived in the mind and intended for subsequent execution. The essence of this message is intelligence and creativity applied to creating innovative solutions for different situations. They don't have to be products. So when we talk about design, we're not talking about fashionable products, expensive products that you give to people and they then put away to gather dust. We're talking about intelligent ways of meeting challenges in society. 100 years ago, Louis Sullivan described it as form follows function. In those days, it was necessary for form to follow function. These days, it doesn't quite have to anymore because we have some 3D printing and all sorts of intelligent things like this. But essentially, it's still a very important principle. The form should be logical and should tell us what the function of a product or a place is. Herbert Simon, the sociologist, called it the transformation of existing conditions into preferred ones. Again, none of this talks about a product. None of this uses the word design or designer as a label to describe something superficial or luxurious. It all talks about intelligence and about methods, process, because that is what design is. Our President Emeritus, Paul Hogan, who was the man who was behind the creation of our organization 20 years ago, coined this phrase, this slogan, which has been bouncing around Europe for the last 20 years. Good design enables, bad design disables. People are not disabled, essentially. It is the system, it is the place, it is the products that disable all of us. You see, I've got these things on, those of you who see, I've got these things on my nose occasionally. They're my reading glasses. Without them, I'm pretty useless. Yesterday, I had a panic moment when I was arriving at the airport. Have I got my glasses with me? Because if not, I'm lost for 2 days, 3 days. Luckily, I had these in my shirt pocket. A word about the poster that illustrates the slogan. It was it was second prize, I think it should have won, in a world-level communication competition we did a few years ago with the International Council of Communication Design, Ecograda. It expresses beautifully this slogan because the first part is very clear and very legible, good design enables. The second part, bad design disables, disappears in the background of the pattern. And that it expresses beautifully the entire message that we have to say there. This is the definition we have given to Design for All when we drew up the Stockholm Declaration of EIDD under my presidency in 2004. Design for All is designed for human diversity, social inclusion and equality. Now that we have established what design is in our understanding, it's not that thing by Philippe Starck, this lemon press. It's a method, a process. Now we can start talking about what is Design for All. And it is using that method, that process, in order to respond to human diversity, to cater for the needs of human diversity, to achieve social inclusion and equality of opportunity. And now I have a few examples, with apologies to those of you who don't see the examples. This is a poster campaign that we did for our conference on Tourism for All in 2007 in the Triennale in Milan. And the photographs show ordinary people who agreed to be photographed in the streets of Milan. And these are not special people, they are ordinary people, but look how diverse they are. Look how different they are. This is the essential message. These people are different, because there are no two people who are the same anywhere in this world. And the underlying message is that people are diverse. And this is what we are facing when we go and design things. Things, places, products, communications. Our tendency is to think it's our responsibility to adapt. Those of us who are able-bodied, we always believe we should adapt to things that are difficult. But you know, George Bernard Shaw wrote this about 100 years ago. The reasonable man, and we all believe we're reasonable, don't we? We're all very reasonable people, aren't we? The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. If you want progress in this world, you have to be unreasonable. You have to be bloody-minded. You have to be hard sometimes. You have to insist. You have to insist it is my right to have change. It is my right to do things differently. It is my right to be diverse. How do we do it? This is also essential to the approach. Again, from the Stockholm Declaration, the practice of design for all makes conscious use of the analysis of human needs and aspirations, and requires the involvement of end users at every stage in the design process, so not just a single consultation at the end. End users, and all users, must be involved at the very beginning and right through the design process. So from the moment when we start drawing up the brief for the designer. Who are they? They are everyone, these users, everyone who is involved in the product life cycle. And I use the word product very loosely. The product could also be a system or a strategy. And everyone who is involved in the processes of decision-making right through the life of that product. So from the moment of making the idea, of formulating it, creating the product, engineering, if you have to engineer, programming, the production itself, evaluation, modification, and return to origin, as well, of course, as actually using the thing. Everybody. The example I like to give is, imagine if you're designing and building a conference center like this. It's always useful to listen to the cleaners. Speak to the cleaners, because the cleaners can tell you how to avoid the accumulation of dirt in the corners. If the architect is too high and mighty to listen to the cleaners, you may end up with a building that suffers Legionnaire's disease. But if you listen, if you are humble enough to listen to the cleaners, you can avoid a lot of major difficulties, as well as rather high costs of maintenance. That can all be factored out in advance. And as I say, this applies to product design, visual communication design, environmental and architectural design, service and system design, strategic and business design. And now a few words about the business response. Design makes business more competitive already. Design in itself. Companies that invest in design can avoid competing on price alone. That's an important message now with the competition from the Far East, where many European companies, many European businesses are trying to cut their prices, trying to cut the rights and social benefits of their working staff in order to compete on price alone with China, Vietnam, Malaysia. It doesn't work. Our social systems are different. We have to compete on quality. We're always being told this by the European Commission, and we are always being told it by our governments. And it's a good and a correct message. And the right way to compete with quality is through design. The UK Design Council briefing the impact of design on business in October 2008 hasn't changed very much in the meantime. discovered that 45% of firms that do not use design find they must compete mainly on price. So they do the price cutting, they cut the employment levels and so on. But only 21% of firms that make a significant use of design also compete on price. So 79% of firms that use design do not compete on price. They compete only on design and quality. And that is what we should be thinking about more. 4 years ago, we had the International Year of Economic Crisis and Recession. That's when it started in 2009. But it was also, by chance, the European Year of Creativity and Innovation. One of the major discoveries, one of the major principles that was set in stone at the end of that year by the European Commission is the message that design is the business route to soft, low-cost innovation. And also that design is a major recovery strategy. My opinion is that we haven't made sufficient use of that in the meantime. DG Enterprise is moving in the right direction, but we need to have more concerted action in this sense, because design really could help us overcome the crisis if we were to listen to it a little more. So if design is so positive, already design, why talk about design for all or universal design and not just design? Because, and the answer, because design for all acts as a multiplier. You see, the classical situation of a designer being asked to design a product for a company usually ends up with that product being designed for a 25-year-old male in perfect health, more or less an Olympic athlete. Now, if you remember those photographs of human diversity from the streets of Milan, you will find out, of course, you only have to consider everybody sitting here in this room. We are not all 25 years old, and we are not all male, thank God, and we are not all Olympic athletes. Most of us, in fact, would have nothing to do with that sort of profile. So the reason why Design for All answers better to the business model is because it is based on human diversity, a much bigger market base. We factor in human diversity into the design process, and this means that we have a much better possibility to respond to what the market really wants, and so have a sustainable market and a sustainable profit margin and sustainable employment. I'm going to give you some practical examples of what we've done. I apologize for the fact that my examples come from Italy, but because I know these intimately. But there are examples of this kind all over Europe. This one is called the Libero Accesso project, and it's run by Confartigianato Vicenza. Vicenza is a town in the northeast of Italy, and Confartigianato is the small and medium-sized enterprises association in that province. It has 60,000 members, very small businesses, in partnership with Design for All Italia, one of our member associations in Italy. Oh, by the way, you can look at the Libero Accesso. I'm afraid I missed out a C on the address. It should have a double C there. So if you're copying it down, please make sure you copy it down with 2 C's. It's my typing mistake. I just noticed that now. This is the logical thinking of the Libero Accesso project, from needs to market, in partnership between users, designers and manufacturer. They are all present in the process. You identify the needs, you devise the idea, you then generate the design, you register the intellectual property, because this is real world market thinking, and then you go to the market. Always in partnership. They are groups of partner organizations, organizations of people with disabilities, elderly people, and so on and so forth in the area of Vicenza, who identify needs. They team up with designers, and then they look for a manufacturer with the assistance of Confartigianato. And this is the kind of thing that has been produced in the last few years. This is called the Easy Reading label. I don't know whether I'm sure you have, you've all discovered just how difficult it is to use the labels inside our clothing when you have to take them to the washing machine, or whether you should take them for dry cleaning. If you can't see the instructions, it's particularly difficult. If you don't see anything, it's particularly difficult to do your washing autonomously. But it's actually very difficult to follow all these instructions anyway, because they give us more information than we really need. So this simple code is tactile, it's in relief, and it reduces the information to 3 kinds of information. Can it be washed in water? How can it be dried? And how it should be ironed. And for each one of these, we have 4 different levels. 1 dot means low, 2 dots means medium, 3 dots means high, and an X means don't do it. So in this respect, you don't need to know, of course, yes, we have here water at 30 degrees, water at 60 degrees, water at 90 degrees, but essentially for most of us, that's secondary information. We want cold, medium, hot, or don't wash it. The same with drying. You can dry it cold, medium, or hot, or don't put it in the dryer. Iron, cold, medium, or hot, don't iron it. That's all we need to know. We don't need all the other stuff. We don't need to know this is a mixture of linen and wool or whatever. That's not relevant to most of us. And especially if you are a blind person, you want to put your things in your washing machine on your own, this can simplify life considerably. But also an older person who doesn't see these tiny things written on the labels anymore, or the labels have disappeared and they've been washed many times, you can't see anymore. But this is tactile and it remains. This project won the Design for All Italia quality label. This is a kitchen, the sottosopra kitchen. It's a modular kitchen which is intended for communities. So people will stay there for a certain amount of time, like a student hostel or something of that kind. It can be adapted very quickly. It can be adapted to whatever the residents' needs are. And this has already gone onto the market as well. And again, it won the quality label this year. The quality label is a special method which we established in Design for All in Italia. And this quality label is not a prize. It recognizes and describes the process of designing so that it creates a model that other manufacturers or other builders or whatever can follow in the future. It's not limited to products. It's available for anything. And here's another example. The new Autogrill service area, it's a motorway service area, Villoresi Est, between Milan and Como on the motorway going up towards Switzerland. Those of you who can see the photograph can see that this is a rather different kind of service area. It's completely open. There is nothing very high, so you can access everything from a wheelchair. There is assistance if you want it. People will help you take your food to the table. It's very open and clear, and there are lots of little features that have been built into this that make it a pleasant place to be and also a very accessible place. But it's not just access. The important thing is also there in the service that's provided by the staff who are trained to provide services to human diversity. This is on the motorway going towards Switzerland, so it's frequented by lots and lots of tourists who are going out of the country who don't speak any Italian, or maybe they speak those 1 or 2 words. I'm coming to the end now. Design for All is built on an inclusive customer base. So, not 25-year-old male Olympic athletes, but everybody. It respects standards. It must respect standards, the standards that are established by the law that introduces universal design. But Design for All goes beyond compliance. It takes creativity and quality of life and beauty into consideration. We want to live in a beautiful place as well, not just one that is accessible. There's a world of difference between the sort of toilet which is supposedly accessible but ugly and looks as though it comes out of an institution, and a beautiful toilet that everybody would like to use. There's a world of difference, and it makes an enormous difference to you as a user to go into one that is beautiful rather than one that smells of an institution. Design for All is creative, it is innovative, and it is business friendly. It guarantees a good return on investment. And I want to point out that word and underline it. It guarantees a good return on investment. Because when you consult with your market during the process of of designing and creating a product or a place, when you consult with your market, you know you have a better chance of responding to what your market really wants. And so you will have a good market, a guaranteed market. It is, in short, it's the future of European business and also administration. And I wish I could have shown you some examples of design for all also in the public environment, especially some of the work I've been doing with the city of Gdynia just recently, and will be doing again also next month. But time is too short for that, so I'll just have to ask you to come up to Gdynia and have a look sometime. Thank you. Dziękuję.